You know, a great thing this church does is if you don't have a Bible, they give them away, and the ushers are coming forward. So if you don't have a Bible, or maybe you have one, but your dog ate it at home, well, I'm glad your dog is into the Word. But we all want you all to have scriptures. And if you don't have one, just lift your hand up, and they'll go ahead. And it's a gift to you. Please take it home and read it and get into it. Not just your dog chewing on it, as far as that goes. There's another great tradition of this church, is that we stand out of respect for the reading of the scriptures. So if you're able, would you please stand? As I read to you this Psalm of David, Psalm 13. David writes, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him. Rejoice. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. And I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me." May the Lord add his blessing to this difficult passage. Would you please be seated? Like I said before, this is the other side of the 23rd Psalm. These are the two short Psalms. Psalm 23, only 6 verses. Psalm 13, only 6 verses. And remember last week, the 23rd Psalm is all about the presence of Jesus Christ, our shepherd. He's so engaged with every detail of our life. And that's when we have that remarkable sense of feeling safe. But then it's interesting, this second Psalm is in the place of 13. Usually 13 is a bad numbers and speaks of a bad day. So apparently Psalm 23 are for good days. Psalm 13 is for bad days. Because let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel like God's a million miles away? That even though you read 23rd Psalm and you speak of God's presence, but what it feels like is a sense of fear that you're alone. God's abandoned you. Matter of fact, sometimes you will say it to somebody and they'll quip back to you, well, if you feel like God's a million miles away, guess who moved? Well, that's cute. But what if I didn't move? What if I haven't done anything? And it still feels like God has abandoned me. C.S. Lewis wrote a little book called A Grief Observed shortly after the death of the love of his life. This was his only wife. She contracted cancer and died. Broke his heart. And a lot of people didn't like this little book because it didn't sound like the great faith of C.S. Lewis, for he wrote, "Meanwhile, where is God? Go to him when your need is desperate, when all other help is vain, and what do you find? A door slammed in your face, and a sound of bolting and double bolting on the inside. And after that, silence. You may as well turn away. The longer you wait, the more emphatic the silence will become." Now, C.S. Lewis got through this season all right, strong in his faith. But he did have seasons. There were times he felt abandoned by God. November 1975 marked the loss of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a freighter that was taken down by a hurricane in Lake Superior up in Canada. And the entire crew of 29 were lost. The Canadian folk singer Gordon Lightfoot, who was my favorite in the 60s and the 70s, and the 80s and the 90s. He hasn't croaked, so he's still croaking. But he memorialized it with this long song called "The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald." Here are some of the lyrics. "The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down. of the big lake called Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November grow gloomy. When supper time came, the old cook came on deck saying, "Fellas, it's too rough to feed ya." The captain wired in. He had water coming in, and the good ship and crew were in peril. And later that night, when its lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And then this question is asked: does anyone know where the love of God goes when the waves turn the minutes into hours? When things aren't going well, isn't it amazing how time seems to slow down and the pain just seems to just linger there? You ever ask that question? That you feel abandoned by God? Oh, no. We're all too spiritual for that. I never feel like that. Well, then you're more spiritual than David, because David writes a pickin' song about it. And Psalm 13, the real question is simply this. We believe in God. That's great. But do we always trust what we believe? You see, it's not the same thing. It's easy to say you believe something because all you got to do is say you believe it. But do you always trust what you say you believe? Now, David believed that God was always there. I mean, come on, he wrote the 23rd Psalm. He also wrote Psalm 139 when he says, I don't care how fast you are, you cannot run and get out of the presence of God. You can go to remote parts of the earth. He's there waiting for you. He knows what you're going to say before even a word comes to your mouth. When it is dark and you feel in the center of the pit, dark is light to God and his presence is always with you. So we knew that David believed that God's presence was always with him. But when he writes this psalm, he's not feeling the love. He's not feeling the presence. And if you're really honest, there are times that we ask, God, are you anywhere near right now when I really need your presence with me? Because I'm not feeling the love and I'm not feeling the presence. So if your dog hasn't eaten your Bible, open it up to Psalm 13. The 13th Psalm is really quite simple, like I said. It's only 6 verses, and the structure of the psalm falls into 3 stanzas. The first 2, each stanza with 2 verses, would be the problem, verses 1 and 2. But then in verses 3 and 4, the petition. This is very interesting. Then the last 2, the praise. From where did that come? Most scholars believe David writes this psalm when he's on the run. Either he's running from Saul, who's trying to kill him, or he's running from his son Absalom, who's trying to kill him. See, like poor David and everybody trying to kill him. And at that time, that's called a bad day. And he writes this psalm, apparently. Now, believe it or not, this psalm was put to music. This psalm was put to music? Who would do something like that? How about Johann Brahms, the late 19th century, who wrote, yes, the Brahms lullaby. Na na na, na na na, na 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 na. That was there to comfort a baby. But this psalm and this song that he wrote wasn't there to comfort a lullaby for a baby, but to navigate through a bad day. Look at the problem. First 2 verses. David says, how long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? This isn't the kind of verse that you put on your refrigerator or have a t-shirt made out of it. Does God actually forget us? Does God have certain days that he just kind of has something else to do and he hides his face from us? Pagan litany basically says, well, first of all, there is no God. And if there was, the creator of the universe, why do you think he would even know your name? He didn't even care about you or anything about his presence with you. What if they're right? And yet this is not a psalm about God not caring. As a matter of fact, a few hundred years later, through the prophet Isaiah, God would make this statement. He doesn't forget you. He said, verses 3 and 4 in Isaiah 46, listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, who have been born by me from before your birth, carried from the womb, even to your old age. I am he, and to gray hairs, I will be there to carry you. And I have made, and I will bear, and I will carry, and I will deliver you. That's not like a God who forgets you. Well, of course not. But it doesn't sound like a God who forgets, but what did Jesus mean? Some critics believe that this is evidence that Jesus really was not who he claimed to be, the Son of God, and that he was losing it. Because remember, he's on the cross, being tortured, and what does he cry out? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? It seems at that moment, he's not feeling the love, and he's not feeling the presence of God. So some critics would say, well, see, he's panicking. He's not the Son of God. Well, the only trouble is when you begin to lose it, you don't quote Scripture. And he's quoting Psalm 22, verse 1, from the lips of David. And if you read the rest of Psalm 22, this is a little stretch, but think about it. If Jesus knew the first verse of Psalm 22, do you think he might have known the rest of the psalm? Because in the rest of the psalm, he describes exactly. You want to see what Jesus was looking at when he was on that cross? Read the rest of Psalm 22. And then before you get to the end, there's a celebration by David prophetically that Jesus is celebrating how God would deliver him even when he wasn't feeling the presence of God during his crucifixion. And so what is going on here? Because we have felt those moments. Have you ever felt that God's a million miles away? Well, what does David mean here? He says, how long am I going to have to take counsel in my soul? The Hebrew is wrestle with my soul. I'm wrestling with how long do I have to wonder, God, are you going to be there or not for me? In other words, the choice he's got to make is, am I going to choose to trust what I believe? I wrote a couple Psalms about it. Or am I not? Am I going to trust what I believe or am I not? Because others will mock me and think I'm a real num-num because I do. In these first two verses, 4 times, he's going to ask, how long? How long? How long? And then again, how long? God, are you going to make me wait? Well, you understand C.S. Lewis's statement that sometimes it feels like heaven is bolted from the backside with double bolts and is silent at times. And yet later on in Psalm 27, God says this in the last 2 verses. I believe that I shall look upon the goodness of the Lord, David says. What's he going to see? In the land of the living, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. What's this waiting stuff? You only wait for somebody who's not there yet. And the very fact that you're waiting means that you don't feel they're there and you're waiting for them to show up. But what is this waiting for God thing? You see, waiting is perseverance. And perseverance is one thing in any relationship. It is loyalty. See, if you have a friend, and you have a relationship with a friend, and sometimes that friend disappoints you, and you feel like he doesn't care. You feel like she's not going to be there. But if you are loyal to your friend, you will persevere in that relationship. And you'll wait. You'll wait until that friend shows friendliness again. See, when distress comes, the feeling I have is nobody cares, and maybe my critics are right, and I am simple-minded, believing there's a God who cares. And so the question is, would David trust what he believes? Are we going to see any evidence in these short verses of David's loyalty to God? Well, what you see is he going to trust what he believes? There it is, in the petition. In the what? Look at the next two verses. He's praying. He is praying, talking to the very person he's feeling abandoned from. So he's praying, and he's not sure anyone's hearing this prayer, but because of his loyalty to the relationship he has with God, he will choose to trust what he believes, and that God, even though I don't feel he's around, God's going to hear this prayer. That's his loyalty. And listen to his prayer. He says, "Consider and answer me, O Lord my God." There's his confession. "Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice, because I have been shaken." David is praying. And because of his loyalty, he's believing that God's hearing his prayer and will respond to his prayer. But David is asking for something here. Do you see it? He's asking for something new. He's saying, Lord, you need to light up my eyes. The Hebrew, you need to enlighten my eyes, because right now I need a new view of you, God. Because the view I have of you right now is pretty tarnished, and quite frankly, I'm struggling because it's cloudy vision. It's like my view of you has been darkened, and I can't see you for who you really are right now. The world does that to our faith. It's like cataract, blurring your vision. Seems like I've always had bad eyes. And when I was in my late 20s, there was an accident in Russia, car crash, and the glass broke and cut the guy's eyes up, and they healed up and he could see. So we make a science out of it called RK, radiokeratotomy. Well, I'm going to have that done. I wouldn't have to wear glasses anymore. Then I'd really be a chick magnet. So basically, I have them do the surgery, and they cut up this eye. And this one, because our brain can flip, they have it for long distance. And then this eye is so I can read. This is great. So I have the surgery, radiokeratotomy, and they cut this eye, and they cut this eye, and then they heal up. And I could see for about 6 years. Now, the reason you don't hear of radiokeratotomy anymore is they said after 6 years it doesn't work. Because you weaken the eyeballs and they keep extending out. So this eye for distance got where everything was blurry, and this thing for close was a little bit better. So I went back to the doctor, said, cut some more. No, you got scars all over your eyes. You can't do anything. Well, I guess I'll just wear glasses. The only problem, because this eye was so different from this eye, when I finally got the right prescription, it made this eye fill the whole frame, so I look like a pirate, scaring children. Arr, eat you alive. I remember Holly coming into church one time I was preaching, and out loud she goes, ah! She had me go to the doctor the next day. He didn't want me scaring children. And he says, well, we can do since your blurry cataract surgery. So they tied me up and put me on a gurney along with about 7 other guys in their late 80s, and we went on into the butcher room. And I remember putting little drops. You go, oh, God, I hope these drops do something. And then they have your eyes latched open, and all of a sudden they say, this is not going to be a good day. And all of a sudden you hear the whole thing. They stick this thing in the side of your eye, and you hear, they're sucking the picking lens right out of your eye. And then they put a little plastic thing in there, and it flips open. If you're around in 1,000 years and the Lord doesn't come, look at my casket. You'll see dust and a little piece of plastic. And I still need glasses. Now, why would somebody do that? Because I needed my eyes enlightened. I didn't want to go through a world with blurred vision of everybody. And that's what he's praying for here. God, I have a darkened view of you, and that's what the world does, by the way. And so he says, Lord, enlighten my eyes. And what he's asking is enlighten my faith, my view of you. Do you remember where you got your first view of understanding what God was really all about and what was true about him? Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 1, he says, you do understand your faith was a gift given to you. You received a faith, the same kind he received, because no one's going to be able to recognize the truth about Jesus. Come on. Do you think you figured Jesus out on your own? I've told you this before. What, 5'7", little Jewish guy 2,000 years ago? Kind of looked a little bit like you. You know, God in a bod, created the heavens and the earth. You're not. Created the heavens and the earth. And all of a sudden, he gets executed by Rome. But the execution is really a sacrifice that God's providing for the forgiveness of our sins. God raises him the third day from the grave. And if we believe it, we go to heaven. Who's going to believe a ridiculous story like that? But see, Jesus even recognized that. That's why in John 6:44, Jesus said, no one's going to recognize who I am and the truth of the gospel. No one would come to me unless the Father what? Draws him. Verse 45, and the prophets say, the Father will cause them to learn of me. Recognize, give them new eyes, a fresh view to see the truth. What amazes me is that I believe the gospel, and I believe that is absolutely who Jesus is and what he accomplished on the cross for the forgiveness of my sin. I don't understand why I believe it, but I don't have a question about it in my mind. Again, like I said before, I know some brilliant people who are atheists, and I know some equally brilliant people who are Christians. I know some num-nums that are atheists, and I know some num-nums that are Christians. It's not something we figured out, but God has already at one time in your life answered David's prayer for you, enlightened your eyes, gave you a clear view of the real truth of the gospel and the truth of God, who he is. And David's prayer is basically, I need this restoration of new sight because God, he says, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to die. My faith will die. See, David had a long-standing history on the battlefield. He was a warrior. That's why God said, you're not going to be building my temple. Your son, Solomon, he'll build it. You're a man of blood. Because David, he fought during battles when if you were wounded in a fight, in a battle, you didn't cry out, medic, because there was no medic. And don't be expecting somebody to run up to you with a stretcher. There are no stretchers. Basically, your hope of living is if after that battle was done, maybe, just maybe, some of your friends would come and see if you're still living. The picture here of this phrase, sleep, the sleep of death, the picture here is the battlefield where you've been mortally wounded, you're lying in the mud, you're bleeding out, and unless something happens, you're going to sleep the sleep of death. Your faith is going to die. And the antagonists are going to be proven as truth. Martin Luther put it this way, our hope despairs, and in our despair, hopes. There's a call for God to hear and deliver David from this feeling of being abandoned and lost. And what does that feel like? Feels like a low-grade fear in your soul. But he prays, oh, Yahweh, my God, here's his confession of faith. God, show me you are there, and I've not been abandoned. I need spiritual cataract surgery. I need you to heal these spiritual cataracts now because I'm filled with anxiety and fear. God, I need a new view of you. And here's the kicker. Whenever you need a new view of God, and you may need a few of them in your lifetime and your spiritual journey, God will always give you a new view of himself when you ask for it. But can you remember the last time you asked God to enlighten your eyes, give you a new view. Because people you've been hanging around with, the work that you've got, the world you live in, this pandemic has all basically created little cataracts in your view of God, and you're starting to feel more fear than anything else. And David knows God is going to come through. He's going to trust what he believes. Look at the praise in verses 5 and 6. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. Those two words, simply one Hebrew word, chesed. It's the word translated in the New Testament, agape. And it speaks of a covenant, loyal love for the well-being of another. That's literally what the Hebrew means. And David is simply responding, since God, you have made a covenant of loyalty to me, why would I not, as your son, your daughter, have a little bit of loyalty and weight on you, even when right now I'm not feeling your presence or the love? But he says, God, enlighten my eyes, deliver me from this feeling that I've been abandoned. He says, I've trusted in your steadfast love, your loyalty, your covenant for my well-being. And then watch the verbs here. My heart shall rejoice in your deliverance, salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. Guys, here's a great chance for you to impress your spouse, your girlfriend, whoever you're with. I know we all slept through 9th grade English, but look at the tense of the verbs. My heart shall rejoice. I will sing. What's the tense? Well, Myrtle, those are future tense verbs. Oh, Mobley, I know why I love you. The point is that these are future tense. David's not playing the game that many of us Christians do. Our life just sucks. And we're going, but I will still praise God. Even though I don't feel like it, I don't want to, and I have no reason to, but because I got to go to church on Sunday and someone's going to ask me how I'm doing it, oh, I'm doing just great, under God's blessing, walking worthy of the salvation call. And yet inside, you're still dead. You still got this fear because you have not asked God to enlighten your eyes. But notice what David does here. He makes a vow. He says, God, when you deliver me, I'll rejoice. And when you deliver me from this feeling of abandonment, then I'm going to sing that rejoicing through song. Well, how's he going to know that God's answered his prayer? What's it going to feel like when what does the soul feel when God enlightens the eyes and your soul gets a new view of God? You know what it feels like? That fear fades away and you have a feeling of safe. You feel safe. See, have you ever wondered, what does it feel like when you feel loved? That's what it feels like to feel loved. You feel safe. Gentlemen, when you love your wives, they feel love when they feel safe. We feel the love of God when we feel deep in our soul safe. And when that fear fades away, you wake up the next morning and you know, I'm not so fearful. As a matter of fact, I'm feeling pretty safe. That's when God has enlightened your eyes. And David says right here, hey, when that happens, I will tell you, I promise, when you deliver me, and I feel this feeling in my soul of feeling safe again, and thus feeling your presence and your engagement, that's when I will rejoice and I will sing. 21 years ago, my wife and some folks threw a 50th birthday party for me. 21 years ago. How old am I? And I remember just about 6 months ago, we had all these family movies and different movies and CDs and stuff. So I went to the store that would turn them all into a flash drive. So I got this thumb drive. I got them all on there now. So, I used to say I'm tech-tarded, but I was rebuked. I can't say that word. So I'm low-tech, slow-tech. So I stick this thing in the computer, and I'm looking at the files, and I see Darryl's 50th birthday party. I remember going, did I have a 50th birthday party? So I play the thing. There I am, sitting on the stage on a big couch, and I got people's packed the chapel at the seminary, and we've got my sons are up there saying how wonderful of a dad I was. Even Holly got up and said some nice things about me. They gave me golf clubs. What a remarkable night. And I saw watching the computer, and I went, oh my, I don't remember one thing from that night. But I tell you, I remember every detail of my 40th birthday. Because the day I spent the last 30, 40 years rejoicing and celebrating and giving thanks for my 40th birthday. See, apparently, David knows the way you put a hook into a memory so that the powers of darkness cannot remove from your memory all the good things. So you end up an old man, and something about pain. You remember pain. And so what happens, you get my age, and all you remember are the bad things. And that's why you look like you're a Christian who's been baptized in pickle juice. The fact is that you really think how tough your life was because powers of darkness just took right off your radar, because every time God blessed you, God delivered you, gave you that sense of safety, you forgot to put a hook in it so it would not slip from your memory. And what's the hook? Rejoicing, grateful, and celebrating. But it says you got to sing. Oh man, I don't sing. I sound like a wounded dog. That's why I'm usually way over there. I don't want to hurt anybody by my singing. And when I'm next to somebody singing beautifully, usually I just say, God, me too. Just right there. This is me doing what she's doing. But it's not so much that singing about the music, but it's the rejoicing. It's expressing the grateful heart, but expressing it in celebration in some way. And that can be through song. At least you can hum a zippity-doo-dah. A little Irish dance. Sometimes, somehow, celebrate those moments of deliverance that all of a sudden the fear had faded and you feel safe again. Remember how that happened, because that's going to help you in the future. Great is thy faithfulness. When I remember how many times he's delivered me in the past, it gets really easy to pray that prayer. God, my sight's a little tarnished here, a little cloudy. I need a fresh sight of you. And then I experience that fear disappearing. Do you remember the story of Louis Zamperini? Some of you do, some of you don't. He was the POW who ended up tortured in a Japanese prisoner camp. Louis Zamperini had competed in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. But when World War II broke out, he became a bombardier on a B-24. The only trouble is over the Pacific, their plane got shot out of the sky, and he and two others survived for 47 days adrift on a raft. Not really the other two others. One died and was thrown over. But as he drifted, he spoke of being surrounded by and encircled by sharks. And he described that they were so close, he could feel their skin. And it wasn't smooth like a porpoise. It was like sandpaper. And apparently at one point, a shark lunged over the wall of the raft, mouth wide open, trying to drag him into the sea. And at that moment, he made a vow. God, if you deliver me from this, I will never forget it. I'll rejoice forever. Well, he was delivered. In a peculiar way, but he was delivered. And after the war, when he got home, do you think he remembered his vow? Oh, no. Oh, no. Totally forgot the vow. That was for 3 years. till the year I was born, 1949. There was a young evangelist from back east in Los Angeles doing a series of preaching. His name was Billy Graham. Louis didn't want to go, but his wife forced him to go. As he heard the gospel, he remembered his vow. He says the moment he remembered his vow, God enlightened his eyes. And he began to rejoice at God's deliverance in his life. And from that point on until his last breath was what? Just a few years ago. He never stopped rejoicing and remembering how God had delivered him and continued to deliver him from that feeling of soul fear to that deep sense, I feel safe. And when I feel safe, I feel loved. And I feel loved because I'm actually sensing the presence of God in my life. You see, here's how it works, folks. I feel, I think, I believe, I trust, I do. I feel abandoned at times. Welcome to the bad case of the normals. So when I feel that way, I think I need a new view of God. So therefore, I believe God is always near, so I will, out of loyalty, ask for it. I will trust what I believe. And then I will keep my vow that the moment that I feel delivered from that fear, and I have that sense of feeling safe again, I will remember. I will trust that I believe this one thing. Jesus doesn't lie. And in Matthew 28, Jesus said, "And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." You see, when you're having a good day, that's Psalm 23. When you're having a bad day, that's Psalm 13. And I'm going to ask you if you do one thing for me. Bow your heads and close your eyes. Now relax. I'm not going to have you do anything weird. Just bow your heads, close your eyes. Now I'm looking for the one or two men who just refuse, because I want to be able to pray for your wives. Little rebellious hearts, you. No, here's what I want you to do. With your head bowed, eyes closed, just shut things out. Can you remember the last time you felt totally abandoned? Deep, deep down, you felt this presence of fear? Maybe you're in the middle of it right now. Do you remember asking God, even though you weren't feeling the presence, you're not feeling the love, but you're going to trust what you believe. And you believe that he's there. And he will hear your prayer. Then ask him, like David prayed, enlighten my eyes. Give me a new view of you, God, just like you did from the beginning. And can you remember when you started to feel that feeling of safe again? Are those of you who are asking even this moment for that prayer, make the vow. The moment you start feeling, whether it be this evening, tomorrow sometime, next week, but you feel that the fear fades away, it's replaced by this deep sense, I feel safe. Then mark it. Put a hook on it. Express gratefulness to God for that deliverance. And do it with rejoicing, celebrating, because you're going to draw upon that again and again and again when there's going to be future bad days. So mark it today. Why don't we celebrate it with singing, just like David? How about a song about once again, let's turn our eyes upon Jesus.